It's such a difficult thing because you take these words and view them in a certain way because a teacher has told you that. It's been a journey for me of disentangling, taking out the error. It's a slow process,
Did you
examining
feel
everything.
brainwashed? Is it like you are reprogramming your
Yeah,
brain? Is that what
I
disentangling
wasn't,
means?
yes, I wasn't really taught critical thinking and how to think for
Yeah.
myself. I was taught, like, this is the right answer.
Hey everyone, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It's Wednesday, February 1st, 2023, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. It's super cold here, and it's time to bundle up and talk about Jinger Duggar brand new book. If you have not been out there in the world and you've been living under a rock, you know that she has been talking to literally every outlet out there about her brand new book as she does publicity to get you guys interested in buying the book. And I honestly think that for my viewers that are interested in the Duggars, that have followed the IBLP and are into learning about the inside workings of what it's like to live under this sort of structure, or if you're a survivor of the IBLP, I actually think that you'll like this book. I was not sure if I was going to like the book, and I'll say this right off the bat, I really loved the book. There were parts about the book I didn't love, like I didn't love that she was like really promoting John MacArthur, her new pastor, towards the end of her book, but I felt like honestly, this is a wonderful first step for Jinger, and it took so much bravery for her to speak out in this way. The fact that she is being this honest and it flat out admits to lying for most of her life because of the way of the teachings, it's a very vulnerable look into what it's like to live under the rules of Bill Gothard. And while she says that it's not a tell-all, it is a tell-all in the respect that once you start to learn about the teaching and the anecdotes that she shares in her book, they can be directly applied to situations that she and her family found herself in, because frequently the same things were happening in all different IBLP families, especially the ones that are the most loyal to the teachings. And the Duggars are loyal to loyal to loyal, like they're diehard, fervent followers of Gothard. So the book is just over 200 pages. I talked to you about some of the things that she brought up about her dad and the control that she lived under these rules, under the umbrella of authority. Today, I want to talk to you about a part of this book where she talks about her social anxiety of the performance that she was on when she was in this world, and really speak to some of the teachings around marriage that have been so hard for her and problematic as she has been trying to navigate a brand new marriage, and also have to figure out how to exist in a world that she never was prepared to exist in. So yesterday in an interview with Tamron Hall, I think this was one of the first times you actually see someone flat out ask Jinger, like, were you brainwashed? Because when you start reading the book, you really do see that Jinger from a very young age was indoctrinated to never think about anything, to never question anyone, and to just do what was told.
Of
Did
examining
you feel
everything.
brainwashed? Is it like you are reprogramming your brain? Is that what
I
disentangling
wasn't,
means?
yes, because I think I wasn't really taught critical thinking and how to think for
Yeah.
myself. I was taught, like, this is the right answer. So I'd always be
Yeah.
thinking, what's the right answer? What's the right answer? Instead of like viewing everything and thinking critically through it for myself.
Say what she was supposed to say, and she was almost like a robot. Like, she even describes her husband saying that he didn't want to be married to a Stepford wife because that's how she was. Like, she was always trying to please him and do whatever he wanted and he needed, because that's how she was conditioned, and that's what was modeled in her home. And it's ironic that that's in her book, because I remember speaking to someone connected to the Duggars a couple years ago, and I said, what are the kids like? And they said, very robotic. So she describes that in this book, and describes the challenges of what it's like to be married and not have any sort of model that's healthy, right? So you get a sense how difficult her life has been, and it really sort of smashes this idea that Jim Bob and Michelle put out, that they had this idyllic marriage. It's so far from the truth. So let's dive into today's topic of talking about the stress and the anxiety of living under these rules, the lies that people tell as a result of that, and really discuss the model of marriage, which is so problematic, and really why Jim Bob and Michelle's marriage wasn't helpful for her, if that makes sense. So can you do me a favor and please give this video a thumbs up? Also, please subscribe to my channel if you've not yet subscribed by clicking on the button down there. Turn notifications on by clicking on the bell and set notifications to all so you never miss a video. If you have something to say, please leave a comment and share this video with your friends. So we talked about some of the first parts of this book. And listen, I don't want to give you all the spoilers. I want you guys to go out and buy this book because I think we talk so much about this family. And yes, she's talking about MacArthur. Some people don't want to promote her or don't want to encourage MacArthur, and I understand that. But if you want to understand the IBLP, she has really great insight. So in the 9th chapter, she actually talks about moving to Laredo. And one of the challenges that she discusses is that she grew up in a world where she never had to think for herself, and her life was a performance. This is something Duggar sources have literally told me for years, is that the Duggars view everything as a performance. Nothing is really truthful. You can never trust what they put on social media. You can never trust the things that they say because they're following a script, okay? They're following a narrative that they want you to think about them. That may or may not be true because it benefits Jim Bob, it benefits the IBLP, or it benefits his pocketbook. So one of the things that she talked about was how it was so hard for her to actually have conversations with people after she moved out on her own because she had never lived in a world outside of the IBLP and she never had to have conversations with people. She even talked about how she never even really she never felt comfortable to be vulnerable enough even with her own siblings about her thoughts and feelings because she didn't want to have a wrong thought or a wrong feeling because she felt like God wouldn't like that. And when you have to suppress all of your emotions constantly, you feel like you're emotionally dead inside. And I think a lot of times when we saw the show, they felt like, where's the affect? Where's the happiness? There was never any true excitement a lot of the times from the kids. So this is what she said. Another reason why those conversations were difficult was because I always believed there was a right answer and a wrong answer to everything. Saying the right thing was part of being a light to the nations. I thought by projecting confidence, knowing what to say, and always smiling, I would make my faith look more appealing to the world. I could do that in front of large crowds if it was as if there was a script to follow. The same was true on TV. I knew how I was supposed to talk and act when the cameras were rolling. When traveling for the show, a book signing, or mission trip, I would interact with a lot of people, but they were passing acquaintances. I would repeat the same cliches over and over during these introductions, and I was always with my sisters. So if I didn't know what to say, I could turn to one of them. Getting to know someone by myself forced me out of that performative mindset. It put me in an unpredictable situation because I didn't know the other person. I didn't know what they expected me to say. I had no idea how to make them happy. I didn't know who I was either, so I had to adapt to the other person's personality or I'd freeze. If life consists of moving from one script to the next, then life itself becomes a performance. That's essentially what Gothard taught me life should be. This lack of authenticity makes developing close relationships incredibly difficult. If I'm worried about saying the wrong thing or stepping out of my role in the drama of life, then I can't get to know someone and they can't get to know me. When you think of it in this context, they're on a show and they believe their job is to spread the gospel to the nations, and they need to be the most upstanding example for the IBLP. Now, Tamron Hall actually asked Jinger in her interview if she felt like the IBLP had used the Duggars as a marketing branch or if they were almost using them to promote for the cult. And Jinger didn't really, she kind of walked around the question and said that no, her parents really believed that this is what they should do and they wanted other people to live like this. I do think the IBLP used them. I think it was a mutually beneficial relationship, if you're going to ask me. But when you understand that, on the show, they always said the exact same things. They always had the same, cliches, like she said. Even on social media, when you read their social media, it's very rarely ever deep. It's always very superficial. The adult daughters, their demeanor lacks a lot of emotion. And as she's describing, it's because they lived in a world where they had to just be on all the time and act like everything was great and happy, and had scripts that they could follow and say to things to people when they asked them questions. And then when you take them out of that environment, she's floundering because she doesn't know any other way. So as she's saying, like, it's hard for people to get to know each other. It's hard for her to have any sort of connection or deepness in their relationships, which is, again, probably another reason why some of the kids feel so disconnected to each other, or they're disconnected from their parents, because there's a lack of closeness and there's a lack of intimacy in their conversations, okay? So she spends a lot of time in the book really talking about women, okay, and the model that she received at home. So you have to remember that when she's talking about how she had to follow a script, she's talking about, well, what Gothard taught, but who's bringing it into her house? Her parents. So obviously she's having this modeled to her by her parents. So in a way, yes, it's Gothard's teachings, but her parents are still following it and choosing to follow it and bring it into their kids and indoctrinating their kids with it. So it's not just like it's just Gothard's fault. The parents are also doing this. And then on top of that, mom and dad are modeling a really unhealthy marriage dynamic, which makes her have walk into an impossible situation where she doesn't know how to have a voice as a woman, because she was never taught to have one because she couldn't have a voice. So this is what she says. Growing up, I thought I had to perform for the world, putting on a joyful, self-assured countenance at all time. For women particularly, this expectation seemed to often extend to the home. In many of the families who attended Gothard seminars, it was my impression that women would follow a specific script with their husbands. They would think it was their job to be agreeable and encouraging. Many of the women I interacted with seemed to make a point to avoid any topic that might lead to conflict. Why did Gothard teach women to always be agreeable? Because if they complained or argued with their husbands or failed to support them, those husbands would look for other women to support and submission. So if you're married to someone, the idea is you need to be agreeable, you never argue, you just go with the flow. This actually sounds a lot like what's happening with Anna Duggar and why she's in this marriage. Because she's told and taught and modeled that if you don't agree, the excuse that Gothard gives is that they're going to find someone else that will do this. Because your whole, like, it's reducing a woman literally to her sexuality and to her submission. It doesn't take into account her needs, her wants, her desires, her emotions, and her thoughts or her feelings. It says your only value is actually serving the man, not the other way around, not being in a mutual biblical marriage. I mean, even if you look at the Bible, which I'm not a Christian, but if you look at the Bible talks about the woman submitting, but the man also is to serve the woman and treat the woman like the church and serve her and be a servant to her. So it's a mutual submission to one another. But he takes it to such an extreme level of patriarchy that the man doesn't have to submit to anyone, nor serve the wife, because frankly, if she doesn't do what he wants, he'll find someone else. And that's what they're taught. So this is what she shares this story. Here's a summary of a story from one of Gothard's seminars where he describes this horrifying perspective. It explains so much of my actions during my first year of marriage. A woman came up to him and asked him why her husband left him. Gothard had no idea. He implied that the woman was very attractive. As they talked, Gothard figured out that this woman never encouraged her husband. She was sad and critical of him. She didn't have a grateful spirit. And if she had a grateful spirit, Gothard told the audience she would still be married. Gothard filled this story with drama and intrigue. He told the wife that he was sure her husband was going to leave her for a woman at work because that's where he was being complimented and experiencing female gratitude. From Gothard's perspective, a man is owed that kind of regular gratitude. If a wife doesn't regularly compliment and talk about how wonderful he is, he can't be expected to stick around. So a woman's job is to seriously just fawn over their husbands, worship the grounds that they walk on, not have an opinion, never argue, never disagree. And if she does, Gothard sets it up that it's oh, well, that's why he doesn't love you. Not actually saying to the guy, it's a mutual back and forth here. You can't just bulldoze over your wife. You can't just steamroll her. She gets to have an opinion. And it's interesting because I actually spoke to a source last night who said that back in the early 2000s, Michelle actually brought in friends because she was having trouble with Jim Bob. And she was describing Jim Bob as sort of being a bulldozer and trying to like bulldozer her way over her, like she couldn't have a voice in anything. And she wanted others to step in and sort of talk to Jim. And that never changed because Jim wouldn't listen to anyone. So Michelle's never really had a voice. And when you think about the story, Ginger goes into detail about how this might impact a woman, a child, or a teen that's learning these things to think about what this means in a marriage. And this is what she wrote. Gothard made me believe that all men are like the one he described in his story. For that reason, I thought that when I married, I was going to have to constantly encourage my husband or he was going to leave me. When I was younger, I assumed that if my husband had an affair, it would be my fault. Yes, he would have messed up, but I would be to blame because I hadn't been the wife he needed to be happy and encouraged. Because that was what I assumed about marriage. I was scared I wouldn't measure up. I wouldn't be the kind of encouraging, happy wife my husband needed. Young girls, teens, are being taught at a young age that it's their job to keep their wives or their husbands happy. At home, she's literally seeing her mom model that to her dad, never talking back to him and being the happy, dutiful, happy wife. Like that's what all kids would say. Oh, she's such a happy wife. Well, she didn't really have a choice, or Jim Bob was going to steamroll her. And then imagine the kind of shame that puts on a woman and the unhappiness because they never feel like they're measuring up and that their husband is 1 foot out the door. And then if they do mess up, if their husband is unfaithful, they don't have to take accountability because it's the woman's fault. So in a marriage, how that plays out with Anna is that Josh cheats on her, goes on Ashley Madison, and it's her fault. It was her fault because, I don't know, she was pregnant all the time and she wasn't giving him what he wanted sexually, or she was too complainy, or she was too opinionated. She asked too many questions. So when he cheated, she blamed herself. Now he's in jail and he's been incarcerated for all of this time, and she is blaming herself, probably because I'm assuming she thinks that based on these teachings, he wouldn't have looked at that content had she not been a better wife, had she not been more accommodating in the bedroom, had she not been a better cook, had she not kept the house cleaner, had she not been more happy, had she not taken care of the kids better. Not his, it's her fault, not his. So that's how it made its way into Anna's relationship. And I think that's sort of what she's talking about. Like you can point to all the different things in this world where you're like, oh, okay, you've got Michelle constantly acting like you're happy. You've got Anna, who's had a husband that has had an affair and she hasn't left him. And for Ginger, this is what she said affected her. That first year of marriage, I may not have said I still had this perspective on marriage, but I acted like I was the one responsible for my husband's happiness and fidelity to me. For my entire life, I'd been taught that when I married, I needed to perform for my husband. Those instincts aren't going to disappear overnight, even though I had intellectually disentangled the truth that I should support, love, and encourage him from the error of thinking that it was my responsibility to keep him faithful. If you think about it in this way, she kind of credits Jeremy in that she said that Jeremy didn't want her to be a Stepford wife. He wanted her to have opinions. He would encourage her to share what she thought and what she wanted and to not just defer to him for answers. And he would tell her that it was okay to make mistakes and that she didn't have to be perfect all the time. And, you know, she said that Jeremy is really good about being an equal partner and that he encourages her and he makes her feel secure in that she doesn't have to be on a performance with him because he wants her to be real. He doesn't want her to be a performer. He doesn't want her to feel like it's her responsibility because Jeremy's position is we should be in this together. So whether you don't like Jeremy or you do like Jeremy, the way that she describes this is that Jeremy doesn't want her to be a fake performance artist doing whatever he wants. He wants an actual partner. that gives me a little bit of like, okay, you've got a decent husband in that respect. It's nice to see that he values her enough that he believes that she has an opinion. And it's good that he's encouraged her to have these opinions. So she thought that this was what marriage was. Is she talking about Gothard, or is she talking about at home? Gothard was never married. Gothard never had any kids. So who modeled this at home? Her mom and dad. So what she's saying is, I watched my parents have a dysfunctional marriage, my mom not having a voice, my dad bulldozing her, making her feel bad for everything, and my mom feeling like she had to do everything perfect so that he didn't do anything like cheat on her. And saying that like Josh does the same thing to Anna. And the ironic part is that a source told me that Josh treats Anna the exact same way that Jim Bob treats Michelle, like crap. So that's what I have for this video. I would love to know what your thoughts on this. I have another video coming up in just a minute where we're going to talk about one of the Duggar sons reaching out to me. Yep, one of Ginger's brothers reached out to me last night. I was shocked by this, by the way. And the misdirection and deflection that came out, having to experience it myself, I can only imagine the games that are being played behind the scenes with Ginger. But I'll tell you about my experience coming up. So tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Bye, guys.